My guest at this time is Cam Edwards. He's the editor-in-chief for BearingArms.com, and he's the longtime host of Cam & Company, which focuses extensively on Second Amendment issues. Guns are the central political issue in Virginia politics right now. Democratic majorities were elected to both chambers of the Virginia General Assembly last month. Come January, they plan to team up with Democratic Governor Ralph Northam to pass gun control laws. In response, dozens of Virginia localities are passing sanctuary policies to let state politicians know they don't plan to enforce any laws they deem unconstitutional. So how aggressive are Virginia Democrats planning to be, and what impact will these sanctuary policies have? That's what we'll discuss for the next few minutes. And Cam, it's great to have you with us.
Greg, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, Ralph Northam called a special session of the legislature last summer. Didn't go anywhere, but he initially wanted a whole list of things like universal background checks, red flag laws, ban on assault-style weapons, and so forth, mainly what we normally hear during the gun debate. There was no talk that I remember of confiscation. That seems to have changed now. What are Democrats proposing?
Yeah, one of the bills that's been pre-filed for January is a bill that's been introduced by the next Senate Majority Leader, Dick Saslaw. So this has got some backing behind it. It's called Senate Bill 16. It is a ban on, quote-unquote, assault weapons, but it is a ban on the possession of, quote-unquote, assault weapons. Now, the bill doesn't get specific about what gun owners are supposed to do with the guns that they currently legally own, but under the terms of this bill, we would not be allowed to continue to legally possess these firearms.
Does the bill say anything about how they would remove these previously legal firearms?
No, they leave that very vague and fuzzy. So you don't know if there's no mention of a compensated confiscation program like what we heard from Beto O'Rourke on his aborted presidential campaign. It's silent. There is simply a ban on the continued possession of these guns. So does that mean that the police, try to go door to door? I doubt it because, we don't have gun registration in Virginia. So the police don't know who owns these firearms. Would this be simply if you're caught with one of these firearms in the future, then you would face a felony possession? It could be. And that gets us into these Second Amendment sanctuaries where a number of these counties are saying we're not going to strip our citizens of their legally and lawfully acquired firearms.
You've been able to attend several of these county meetings now. Talk about what the resolutions actually say and what's driving these huge turnouts. Many, many dozens, perhaps hundreds more than usually show up at these types of meetings.
Oh, my gosh. It's really incredible, Greg. I mean, I started out as a local cub reporter in Oklahoma City, and I had to cover county commission meetings. And you'd see 14, 15 people there in Oklahoma County, which had, about 500,000 residents. In Shenandoah County, Virginia, more than 1,000 people showed up for their county commission meeting. We had 1,500 or so people show up for a city council meeting in Virginia Beach on Tuesday night. And there wasn't even a vote. They were just simply asking the council to take up a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. The text of these resolutions can vary a little bit from county to county as the different commissioners add their own tweaks. But in essence, they say that it is the intent of the county not to spend any funds or resources enforcing unconstitutional gun control laws. What we have seen over the past few days, however, are a couple of counties that have gone a step further, and they've actually introduced ordinances as opposed to resolutions, actual laws on the books saying we will not enforce these unconstitutional gun control laws. And you've seen a number of county sheriffs, and you're even starting to see Commonwealth's attorneys, our local prosecutors in Virginia, who are also coming out and getting on board with this movement.
Cam, being the good reporter that you are, I'm sure you've chatted up some of these people who are waiting in line hoping to just get in the room for these discussions. What's driving them? What are they concerned most about if, in fact, what the Democrats want to happen in Richmond next month actually happens?
I hear a couple of things that are pretty common. One, you've got folks who don't feel like they're being listened to. And they're concerned that the voices of Virginians across the state are going to be ignored in favor of Fairfax County, Richmond, and the metro area of Virginia Beach. And so they want to be heard, I think, first and foremost, and they want a seat at the table. But they're also concerned about the loss of their rights. They're concerned about their children not being able to go hunt or to learn how to use firearms in self-defense. They're worried about the right to keep and bear arms not being stripped from every Virginian right away, but being curtailed to the point that it becomes irrelevant a generation from now.
The debate over sanctuary status is fascinating, particularly in the backdrop of the sanctuary debates we've had over immigration in the last few years, because on the one hand, you've got a lot of Democrats and a lot of folks in the media saying, keep in mind, these are not legally binding. At the same time, sheriffs are constitutional officers, and they do have some flexibility on what they're going to enforce here. So some see a double standard, others don't. What's your take on this?
I don't necessarily see a double standard because I think, as you say, sheriffs and every law enforcement agency has discretion about what laws they're going to enforce. We've seen, the district attorney in San Francisco announced that he won't be prosecuting prostitution cases, public urination, other what he calls quality of life crimes. Even Virginia's Attorney General Mark Herring has talked about wanting to decriminalize cannabis in the state of Virginia, even though it remains illegal at the federal level. And gun control activists themselves, Greg, honestly, around the country, in places like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere, they're putting local gun laws on the books in violation of state firearms preemption law. So they're doing exactly what they're complaining about gun owners doing in the state of Virginia. I think it is a fascinating case for federalism. I do think that it is also a fairly American response to overarching bad legislation. Throughout our nation's history, when governments have overreached at the federal or state level, there's been that local response, whether it's prohibition, whether it's the abolition movement in the 19th century, and when it comes to protecting and securing our Second Amendment rights today.
Cam, it's always difficult to predict, but when you look at the breakdown of the incoming legislature, yes, the Democrats have control, but it's only 21-19 in the Senate, and it's 55-45 in the House. And so obviously some of these newly elected Democrats are from fairly competitive districts. The senators won't have to worry about it for 4 years. The delegates will have to worry about it in 2021. But what do you think is likely to happen here? Will enough folks from competitive districts kind of water down what the Democrats want to do here, or do you expect Dick Saslaw and Ralph Northam to kind of jam this through?
Yeah, I think I'm going with door number 2 at the moment. I don't think that there is any appetite on the part of these newly elected lawmakers to tread cautiously. They feel like they have their majority. They feel like they have their majority in many cases because of gun control. And so, there's this attitude, I think, among gun control activists and anti-gun lawmakers that if we don't go full steam ahead with our full agenda, then we're going to be disappointing our constituents. They feel like they feel like they ran as anti-gun candidates and they won, and they have nothing to be ashamed about. So it's up to us as gun owners, I think, to show that, A, guns were not the driving issue for a lot of these voters, but B, the Second Amendment supporters in this state can still run and win in these suburban districts, as we saw with State Senator Amanda Chase in suburban Richmond and a couple of other lawmakers. It's interesting to me, Greg, that a lot of the Republicans who lost in November were the ones who went sort of squishy on the right to keep and bear arms. And they started talking about, well, maybe we could support a red flag law or something like that. They were the ones that lost a lot of their election races, in some cases very narrowly. And I think it's because they didn't give gun owners a reason to turn out and support them. So I don't believe that the state is lost, but I do believe that gun owners are in for a really, really tough next couple of years.
Well, it sounds like voters in a few weeks in Virginia will find out exactly what they voted for, see if they end up liking it. Cam, thanks very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Cam Edwards, editor-in-chief at bearingarms.com, also the longtime host of Cam & Company. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.